So, and now we're getting around to our favorite focus point here, which is Lee Smith, and Lee is coming to us. She's getting up early today, so she's on the as I say, up in Reno, close to what I call the left coast. So there's no shame in that, and she seems like a wonderful person. And she's going to lead us and talk about her candy method, and I know that's going to be a lot of our discussion today. But let me tell you a little bit about her. Well, she's a speaker and a presentations consultant. Todd Brewster was supposed to be on here. He probably watched the replay, but he asked us last week in our mastermind, how do I get more stages? How do I craft a talk that I want to do on his book, which is Grandpa Loves Baseball, that he wrote? How do you do that? So she's a consultant with UpCycle Coaching, who guides entrepreneurs to their own state, to own their stage with a dynamic presence, certainty, and confidence. Those are all important things. She's a creator of the Candy Method for speaking confidently and a show host of UpCycle Your Life on the Win-Win Women TV. I guess I don't get to qualify to be on that. Maybe I do. We'll talk about that later, Lee. So Lee is a 3-time best-selling author, an award-winning international speaker. She's a certified life coach, a certified NLP master practitioner, and a timeline therapy practitioner. In addition to her passion for speaking and high performance, Lee is a wife, a mother of 2 amazing kids. She loves coffee, cooking, getting outdoors for walks, hikes, snowshoeing, and Lee is driven to help entrepreneurs and coaches to see the best within themselves and to accept no excuses, only excellence. Lee, welcome.
Wow.
How are you today?
Thank you, David. I am fantastic. And while it might be an early start to the day, all of you have already made it worthwhile. So thank you so much for being here, because wherever you are in the world, you could be anywhere else doing anything else. And you choosing to be here saying yes to you and yes to learning and growing and networking with other people is really fantastic.
Well, we appreciate you, Lee. And what we're going to do here at this juncture is we're turning the floor or our focus over to you. This is a mastermind. I know you and I talked a little bit about it, but I would like for you to kind of help us, guide us on the journey a little bit of things that we should consider in the area of getting our message out or speaking or presenting, because no matter how many stages you've been on, no matter how successful you are with engaging audiences, no matter how confident we may feel at any given point in time, I'm a believer that we can always learn things. And everybody here, including you, Lee, we've all invested our most valuable asset in this time between now and 11 our time and 9 your time. So what I'd like to do is have you kind of give us some things in your agenda that you think we ought to consider as we're trying to get better at communicating our message to an audience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, something that would definitely help me to help you is to understand where, if at all, are you using speaking right now? And what would you say is your biggest challenge when it comes to speaking? Casey, I'm going to call on you first.
Thank you. Well, I do a lot of presentations to individuals, mostly one-on-one, but now I'm reaching out and doing a lot more health and wellness fairs. I'm trying to reach out to HOAs, people where active seniors congregate. I don't have a challenge with speaking. I feel very confident and comfortable doing that. But my biggest challenge is finding the right venue to talk to people.
Great. Awesome. How about you, Bernie?
Well, we had a meeting yesterday, I think it was, and I said my drawback is that I'm an academically trained speaker, and I would like to be more of a extemporaneous speaker, and be a little less structured, I guess. That's a positive. I had one instructor who said, he drilled it into us. He said, you should always write down every word you're going to say, just for, I don't know, safety or so that you don't, have a brain, freeze as you're talking. But I would like to be a little bit more spontaneous and convey my thoughts in more of a Ricky Jean Wright way.
There we go.
Fantastic. That's a great share. And on that note, I'm going to move over to Ricky. Ricky, what about you?
I'm sorry.
Rick, something's
Yeah.
Ricky, your lips are moving, but we're not hearing you. So,
Yeah, my dogs were barking, so
well, we don't mind hearing your dogs. I've got my granddog here, so go ahead.
So I was accused of one time by the senior pastor at our church when he called on me to do something on the spur of the moment. He said, "I wished you'd just be a little more anxious and a little more look like you were worried. And you just, whenever something happens, and you just jump in and do it like nothing is happening." And I said, "Well, there's no use to get all excited about something. It's not going to change things." So I really live by that theory of don't worry, be happy.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. How about you, Bill? I'd love to hear from you.
All righty. Well, I tend to speak based on my personal experience. And so I always start, if it's a particular subject I want to be talking about. For instance, my most recent opportunity this last weekend at a men's conference with about 250 men there, and we had workshops on the Saturday for that. Much smaller groups, but of a number of people anyway. And so I always have an outline of what I want to be talking about, but I try to encourage a little bit of interplay with the audience there. And then I can speak to them extemporaneously based on my own experience to kind of address whatever questions they might have with respect to that. So I just try to take advantage of every opportunity that I get to talk to people. I enjoy meeting people and talking with them, whether it's one or two people or it's a larger group. And if I have a particular subject, then I usually have some written material for that, but I tend to deviate from that a good bit as we get into it and see how it's going and highlight certain things and maybe bring in things that I didn't have in my outline. So seems to work pretty well. So I use the networking groups that I belong to, several men's groups that I belong to, and I've had opportunity on a few occasions to be interviewed on somebody's podcast, which I have no interest in doing one myself. There's a lot of work, but I'm always happy to participate with somebody that already has one and tell my story or whatever they want to have discussed. So it's been fun. I enjoy it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Robbie D.
I can talk on any subject, anytime, anywhere. And if I don't know the answer, I'll make it up. I got a story for almost anything. If I don't know the word, I'll make up the word. I just like talking and being with people and just being happy.
Awesome.
Well, Robbie D, we've learned what that's called now with ChatGPT. It's called hallucinating. So if you start making stuff up because somebody asked you a question you don't know the answer to, that's called hallucination. And by the way, since I know you pretty well, that may be appropriate. So
I was thinking it might be the highest form of artificial intelligence if we're making things up, right? It's
Yeah.
artificial.
yeah, well, that's why I always say artificial intelligence is better than none at all. So,
There we go.
so let's keep working at it. So,
Yeah.
all right, sorry, Lee.
Oh.
We like to have fun here.
Oh, of course. So do I. So do I. And David, what about you? How do you use speaking with what you do?
Everything. I basically am a constant communicator to the chagrin of my 5 children, my 6 grandchildren, my wife, my network, the mastermind, anybody else. I'm always trying to get my message out, have more impact, whether it's my podcast, whether it's this mastermind, whether it's our Wednesday networking group, whether it's church. It doesn't matter to me because I'm a full-on extrovert and I love people. I love to make an impact, and sometimes that's a problem because I need to learn to shut up and listen. So that's the 2 sides of the communication, and that's one of the areas that I always have to work on is the listening side. Listening in the form of an audience takes into account listening to body language, to what we're doing here, kind of knowing a little bit about who we're talking to and those kinds of things. The other problem I have is I have this thing called high-end abstract conceptualization. My brain works faster than my mouth. So a lot of times believe it or not, if you ever listen to me speak, and this is a legitimate criticism, I interrupt myself on an ongoing basis. So my brain says, okay, you really need to go here. And I didn't complete the last thought. My wife tells me this all the time. She says, I know you and I know what you were intending to communicate, but you never completed that thought. So my biggest challenge really is learning to maybe be more like Ricky, maybe to slow down, to allow my mind to stay in sync with my ability to speak. So that's probably the biggest challenge I have, Lee. So thanks for asking.
Oh, sure. Thank you, everybody, for your shares. And before I dive in with some of the information that I'd love to pass along to you, is it okay if I share with you why I'm so passionate about public speaking and just give you a little bit more about
we want to hear that. That's very important to us.
Fantastic. Well, I know we are not promised tomorrow, but hopefully all will go well, and in a few months I will be blessed with turning 52, and I have been speaking since I was 8 years old. When I was 8, I was a very confident reader, and I loved reading aloud to my small groups in school or in front of the classroom, and I loved the response of the audience. And my catechist teacher asked me, would you read the scriptures at an upcoming church service? And I just said yes. I was very good back then at saying yes. And I didn't think of it as public speaking or anything like that. I just thought it's an opportunity to read. I get to read aloud in front of a group of people. And so when that day came and I got up at the AMBO and I'm reading the scriptures and I'm looking out, it was in front of a congregation of about 300 people. And all I remember is everybody's looked back at me with smiles on their faces, and I'm reading aloud. I'm not missing a beat. All is good. And that was fantastic. And the magic for me happened when I walked away from the sanctuary, because I felt this quiver go through my body. And I remember thinking, what is that feeling? And how do I get more of that? And it was from that point forward, I would raise my hand to get to the front of the class to present an idea or story or just actively participate. And this is probably where being an extrovert helped me out too. So I can totally relate to that, David. And it wasn't about, for me, it was not about being the center of attention, because that's so not who I am. And it definitely was not anything to do with being a know-it-all, because I can promise you there were plenty of times when I would shrink in my seat, like, don't call on me, this time I don't know it. But when I had an idea to play with or a story. I wanted to know, could I make you smile? Could I make you laugh? Could I make you think for a moment like, oh, I never saw it that way before? And I continued on through high school, where I was very active in my youth ministry. And at that time, I had lived some life. I had gone through a personal suicide attempt. That was a story. I had been through sexual abuse. That was a story, talking about the power of forgiveness. And I was definitely the expert, so to speak, on being a teenager myself, where we're such pros at taking our little molehills of our lives and blowing them up into mountains, right? And I spoke in front of 500 up to 1,500 fellow teenage peers about, well, if we can do that with the things that seem overwhelming, can't we take the positivity molehill and blow that up into mountains of possibilities for ourselves as well? And I wanted to be that encourager, that inspirer, that motivator of living our best lives. And then when I got into college, I didn't initially pursue speaking. I actually wanted to become a fighter test pilot for the Air Force. 2 years into Air Force ROTC, I realized this hat, it's not fitting me right. I'm like, oh, this calling was not meant for me. And then the real answer came when I could not pass third year calculus. I'm like, I've always been so good at math, but I hit that wall and I said, well, that path is not meant for me. So which way am I going to go now? And I realized, wait a minute, I love speaking. So I went into communications and psychology. And I thought, I will be a corporate motivational speaker. This is awesome. I can go out there and make a difference, and I can travel. I'll be doing what I love, and I can make money, and I'll make really good money. And what I'll do is live on what I need, and then I'll put the rest aside, because my plan was to eventually get married and eventually become a mom. And number one priority for me as a mom was to be a stay-at-home mom. I had watched my grandmother, who had come over from Vietnam, take care of other little ones. And I was there to see their first steps. I was there to hear their first words. And that broke my heart. And I thought, yes, my grandmother is doing a wonderful job taking care of these little ones, but shouldn't the parents be the one who sees this? I'm like, oh, there's got to be more to life than just working and putting out kids and then putting them in somebody else's care. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I had this life plan, right? I was all set. I know what I'm doing for my career. I know what I'm doing financially, relationally. Well, we'll work on that. All of those things. I'm all set. And if you know the joke, right? The good old joke, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Yep.
I had it all put together, and boy, did God have a big laugh with me. And that was in the form of a massive car accident. I was in the hospital for 11 days. I was pretty broken up, and it took me 3 months to recover, and I had to learn to walk again and all of those good things. And during that time, I first had to move back in with mom, which that was an adventure in and of itself. And the other part was I had to sit on the couch while I was healing. I couldn't do a whole lot. And so there was nothing left to do really but read or watch TV. And I was a night owl because, hey, I'm still a young kid at this point in time. And I discovered the one and only Tony Robbins. This was when he was first getting started, and he was putting out his infomercials on personal power. So yes, I bought the tapes. I listened to them several times over. And I remember thinking, who is this? What is he doing? And how do I get to do what he's doing? And that's when that decision moved me into personal growth development. And I studied Dale Carnegie and Og Mandino, Zig Ziglar, and all of those wonderful greats. Norman Vincent Peale, another one of my favorites. And then later, when my life pivoted, because I ended up dropping out of college, I didn't want to go into debt. And there was a calling in my heart to move out west. And I love that you said it was the left side of the country, David. I'm like, I have not heard that before. I love that. And so when I moved to the left, although not lefty, and I eventually met my husband. We were friends, we dated, we got married, and I eventually became a mom, and I did become a stay-at-home mom. And I stuck a pin on that speaker dream because I was all engrossed in being a mom, and I loved it. Fast forward, today my daughter's 20. She's in her second year in college. I also have a wonderful son who's just moving from Chicago to New York, and super, super proud of him. But growing up in the family And while I loved being a stay-at-home mom, I got caught up in giving as a wife, giving as a stepmom, giving as a mom, and I didn't give back to myself. And so over time, and it was a long time, over time, I lost being present and I got caught up in the day-to-day.
Mhm.
And there was a moment when we were on vacation as a family. We were in Hawaii, and we're watching one of the glorious sunsets, because we were blessed, so blessed, to have a 23-day holiday across 4 islands in Hawaii. And so one of these evenings, I'm watching the golden orb setting on the sapphire blue ocean, and the waves are kind of lapping at our feet, and the breeze is caressing our faces and our hair. And my husband's up in front, and he's trying to get the camera lens just right to get all that lighting, so the lens is extended from his face like Pinocchio's nose. And my daughter was a young teenager who's cradled in my arm, and we're having this tender mother-daughter moment. And my stepson, who was already out of the house at this time, but he was on holiday with us with his girlfriend, and they're having their sweet romantic moment. And I remember standing there and just observing all of this and thinking, I'm having an experience that not everybody gets even once in a lifetime. And the moment that thought completed in my mind, I realized I am just thinking this. I am not feeling. Where's the feeling? This is supposed to be amazing. Why am I not feeling happy? Why am I not feeling elated? I'm not feeling anything. And it was in that moment that I became aware I had been depressed. And I questioned, well, how long? And I'm like, wait, you know what? It doesn't really matter how long I've been depressed. The point is, right now, enough is enough. I don't want to feel this way any longer. And then I remember hearing the next thought, which was, well, Lee, what does make you happy? I was so clueless. And I like to say that I was covered in dust. And that dust with a J, because I was just a mom. I was just a stepmom. I was just a daughter, just a wife. And I was just this shell of a woman who had completely lost who she was. When I was in high school, I was known as living, loving, laughing Lee, because I would just take life by the horns and go for it all. And here in this moment when I thought, where is that person?
Yeah.
Okay, if I'm clueless with this happiness, we got a new year coming around the corner. I am going on a quest. I don't care how selfish it seems to anybody else. I am going on a quest to figure out what makes me happy. And then my next thought after that was, I kind of like to have a word to anchor me in this journey, to make sure that I keep going, I don't give up. I thought, what would be a great word? I'd heard of friends who would pick a word for the year, but that was a practice I'd never done myself. And I thought, laugh. I can't remember when was the last time I genuinely laughed. I'm like, okay, great. In fact, you know what? That's what I'm going to do to start this quest, is I'm going to go find everything and do everything I can that makes me laugh. And so when I got back home stateside, I admittedly started on the couch because I had to break through the physiology of the depression, where I was stuck on the corner of the couch most of the day. And I would watch reruns of Friends. I don't know if anybody here watched Friends, but that was one of my favorite sitcoms. I would watch it over and over. No matter how many times I knew the scenes and the lines, I would still bust up laughing. And I thought, okay, that's a start. That's a start. And then I got out of the house, and I was very fortunate that during that time of year, there was a local comedy troupe that put on an improv show every weekend, the first 3 months. So almost every weekend I was front and center, and I was working out my sides and working out my cheeks, and I was definitely getting my laugh on. And then I was also doing some networking, and I knew the people who had an amazing sense of humor. And I thought, if I could just get in their energy, maybe some of that would rub off on me. And after several months of doing these different things that I knew would make me laugh, an amazing thing happened. And there was this feeling in my heart, and it felt like cake and mud crumbling away and this light breaking through. And I felt this warmth kind of slide up, and I felt like it came into my ear, and it whispered, now that I'm here, what do you want to do with me? I thought, it's joy. I have found my joy. This is amazing. And right behind that was a little girl's voice laughing. And I thought, who was that? And it was my 8-year-old self who said, hey, remember this feeling? Remember that feeling that we love? Let's go chasing that. And I went, oh my gosh, I've been so caught up in that day to day. I forgot about my dream. I had stuck a pin in it and I faded. I'm like, oh, definitely time to take that pin out and let's go make this happen. And I fully stepped into Brendan Burchard's world with high performance mastery. I also participated in his world's greatest speaker training. That's literally what he calls it, world's greatest speaker training, between him and Bo Eason and Roger Love. And then I was getting myself going. I thought, well, how do I put myself out there? Well, since I was networking, I went to the network organizers and I said, do you need a speaker or how can I speak? I have a message that I want to share. And started doing that and putting my story together. I thought, I have all these years of personal growth development that I've studied, and I have all these where I did live life. I have these lessons that I've learned. Can I integrate the two together and really take something out into the world? And this is what has brought me to my mission, and I'd love to share it with you. There's a bit of a visual that goes with it. I hope everybody can see this. And it is my mission to transform the reactor. And the reactor is the person who believes that life is happening to them. Does anybody know anybody like that? And they haven't really thought about their dreams. They're just going, like I was, through the motions. And they might have an idea of what their goal is, but really they see themselves stuck. They're stuck putting up fire after fire, and distractions, interruptions, expectations of other people around them, whether it's a partner, spouse, society, what have you. And they just feel stuck and they're living by circumstance, they're living by convenience. And I know all of you in this room know life is not convenient, right? How do I create the transformation? Well, first I take them out from the middle of all of those things and I get them to see themselves first. Who are you? I was clueless about my happiness and I had to get clear on that. And when I did that and I put myself first, I then could clearly see what mattered most to me. What is my priority? And then with that clarity, I could commit to, this is what I'm pursuing. This is what I'm striving toward. And that is the transformation, because when you see yourself first and you know what matters to you, you know what those dreams are, you know, hey, I want to be out speaking. I have a message that needs to be heard out in the world. You become the creator of those opportunities. So that is part of my mission today. And then when the pandemic happened, I thought, I had so much momentum going. I'm ready to be out there in the world. And now we're in this lockdown. Oh, and once I broke through the Zoom fatigue, because we all have that bit of transition, right? Then I thought, okay, well, how can I keep taking my message out into the world? And I crossed paths with the one and only Les Brown, the godfather of motivational speaking. And he was putting out Power Voice Academy. And I went, oh yes, I want to be a student. I want to be his next success story. And went through his program and graduated with him. I still have my voice memos from his feedback with my messages. And then after graduation, he handpicked only a small amount of students for his virtual summits. And yours truly was one of those handpicked. And that was such an honor. And to be able, with Les Brown, he has millions in his audience. They may not be all like today, not everybody shows up live, they watch the replays, and that's fine. I just wanted that visibility. I thought, I have this calling on my heart to take this message out into the world. How do I get it out there? And then I started aligning myself with the right opportunities. So this opportunity to impact, to take my story, to say, you know what, I've been through some stuff. And isn't that what we do in our journey? We all go through stuff. And what we can extract from those obstacles, those struggles, and recognize I'm still here. that didn't kill me off. Yay, great. Well, then how can I help somebody else who might be going through that same thing and taking on it? And this is why I am so passionate about public speaking, because it's not about me. It's about how can I help someone else? So this brings me, these lessons brings me to my candy method. So I'll go over that real quickly. When I talked about being clueless about what makes me happy, and Bill, I would venture to guess that if you asked any of your peers, you asked them the question, do you know what makes you happy? Many of us, if we did that, we would hear what they don't feel happy about. Oh, I'm getting older, I'm feeling stiff, these aches and pains, it's just like, if I could just make it through another day. And it's like, okay, I'm hearing what you don't want, but what is it that you do want that lights you up, that makes you happy? They probably might be half or even just as clueless as I was standing on that beach that day. And so clarity is about understanding, what is it that lights you up? What is it that gets you up out of the bed each day? And this is part of our passion. It's part of our purpose. And we may find our calling out of that. And this can become the message that we take out into the world. And then thinking about, I wanted a word to anchor my journey, because if we're going to be speakers, who's our first audience? Ourselves, right here, right here. What is it that we're saying to ourselves? A lot of the challenges that speakers have, it's all in the stories that they're telling themselves, and that, especially that inner critic, right? Who's going to want to listen to you? Oh, you can't speak extemporaneously, then what good are you? And oh, your message, do you know how many people speak on that message? Who's going to want to hear that? Oh, come on. You're going to make a fool of yourself. And it's like, wait a minute. We have to get past all of that inner critic. And the beautiful thing is that we have what I call the empowering beast. And that is the one who says, you can do anything. You matter. Your message matters. Your audience matters. So let's go do this some way, somehow, whatever it takes. And maybe we look for a speaker coach, or maybe we look for a speaker mentor, or maybe we look for those bureaus and those organizations. Who in my network knows other opportunities for speaking, and using that empowering beast to say, yes, we can move forward. We've got this. We can make this happen. And then the next part is understanding, well, here's where I am today. This is how I want to show up in the world as speaking to organizations, to other networking, at conferences, virtual summits, on being a guest on podcasts. There are so many different ways of taking our message out there. How do we want to do that? And where I am today and that desire, there's a gap in there. So what are the necessary steps that are going to help me get there to where I want to be? And then as I'm working through this day to day, who am I saying that I am? And what is helping me? Because we don't get out of life what we want. We get out of life what our habits are. And we have habits that serve us, and we have habits that might be holding us back. And when we can become aware of what those habits are, this is what I call discipline, then we can amplify the habits that are serving us. And we can replace or minimize the ones that aren't serving us. And that helps us to take ourselves towards our goal better and faster. And then the last part is looking at, well, what is it that I have to offer? I would venture to guess everybody in this room has a cell phone. Am I correct in that? Thumbs up on that? Yeah, right? Everybody has a cell phone. Well, I did some research, and 95% of the population around the world has a cell phone. And what do we have with a cell phone? We have a cell phone number. And if we have over 7 billion people on the planet, and 95% of the people have a cell phone, no two numbers are exactly alike.
That's right.
Isn't that incredible? And this is like the uniqueness that David talked about earlier, that no two people are exactly alike.
Right.
And same thing with what I believe about you. Now, yes, I study from Les, and Les talks about, you have something special. You have greatness inside of you. And I thought, yes, I 100% believe that, but I don't want to just be mimicking Les Brown. I want my own message. So my message to you is I believe you have 3 G's. You have genius, you have gifts, and you have greatness to give the world.
Mm-hmm.
And like a cell phone number can have the same digits 0 through 9, you might find people who have a similar genius, have a similar gift, a similar greatness, but nobody has that same exact unique combination that you have. And when I, as a coach, can help you recognize what those 3 things are, help you step into owning your amazingness, then you understand, oh, this is what I have to give the world. And this is what becomes your signature method or those strong bullet points. And then you take it out. So to summarize that up so that you hear the actual candy process, C is for clarity, getting clear on who are you showing up in the world, what is your message, and who is your audience. The A is affirmation. That's about your self-talk because you are your own first audience. How do you speak to yourself? How do you listen to yourself? And then using that to empower you to take you out into the world. The N is necessity. What are the necessary steps to get you from where you are today to where you want to be? As a person, as a speaker, in your relationships, all those things. The D is discipline. And discipline is looking again at those habits. Which habits are serving me and helping me to get? This might be your evening routine, your morning routine, the things that you are super passionate about that you will do every day. Because we cannot outperform our identity. And so it's like, I'm such a lazy person. Well, then what are your habits going to be? They're going to be lazy habits. Or I am the world's best speaker in the world and the next thought leader. Okay, great. How do I show up then? Which habits are going to support that? So looking at that. And then the why, you. That's all about you and tapping into those 3 G's. So when I looked at myself, I got clear on what my message is. I want to transform the reactor into the creator. What am I going to tell myself? It's like, I have what it takes. I am living the dream of that little 8-year-old girl. And every time I get to do a speaking opportunity, I hear her laughing and I can just feel her dancing inside of me. And it's such an amazing feeling. And then every day looking, what's the necessity? And for me, when it comes to speaking, who is in my audience? And so thank you all for your participation when I asked, okay, great, how are you using speaking now? And what are some of the challenges you're encountering with speaking? And then discipline, it's like, okay, well, first I need to get control of my health because I was so sluggish when I first started out. I let myself go, right? As a mom, I wasn't taking care of myself. So I'm like, oh, I have these dreams now. I want to go chase them. And like, well, chase involves a lot of energy. I need to boost my energy to do that. So what's going to help me with that? And then it became my speaking habits. What can I put together in my speaking habits so that I show up with excellence? Not about perfection, but how do I show up with excellence? And then how do I honor what it is that I have to take out into the world? I thought, I do have this genius. I do have these gifts to give. I do have this greatness about me that I can share. Great. Now, how can I pull this from other people and make that happen? So that's my candy method. Any questions on that?
Well, there's a lot of I know this group, so I'm certain. By the way, you can, if you don't want to jump in there, go ahead, but everybody's mic is open except for Casey's. So just give me a high sign and I'll call on you. And then whether it's a comment or a question or a clarification or how did it relate to you? How did you hear what Lee was saying? Because I heard a lot, and I heard a lot of alignment, first of all, with with my podcast, with warrior versus zombie metaphor. There's a lot of things there, but before I get into get crazy here, I what else, Casey? I know you have to be reacting. I can see your body language on the screen, so I want to let you let it out. So go ahead.
Well, I have a lot of different feelings about what you were saying. My dad, and you triggered this today. I haven't thought about this for decades. My dad was a brilliant man, but he didn't go to school. He had to quit school to help his family.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him, Dad, you could be anything. You can be anybody. You're so smart. He read the paper. He listened to why. It felt to me like he was wasting his life. Why aren't you excited about doing something? I didn't understand it at the time, but you triggered that today. And he said, I am where I am, where God put me, and I'm doing the very best I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be the best dad, the best husband, the best worker, enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand that. How could that possibly be enough when he was gifted and he had so much to offer and he was content? So that's really, I have to process that.
Right. Yeah. Success and happiness, it's different for each and every one of us.
Yeah.
And when we just allow someone else to be in that space, you know, I feel you, Casey, because I do that with my baby brother. I have 2 younger brothers, and I have a baby brother like, you have so much to give. Why aren't you taking it out there? And he's like, because I just love doing what I'm doing. And I'm like, but, you know, it's like, but if only the world knew about you and this. And it's like, oh, but wait a minute. You know, each person has their life to live, right? And if they're happy, then who are we to take that away from them, right? But then there are so many who are not happy, and it's like, how can we spark that? How can we ignite that? And I feel that's, in a sense, a moral obligation as a speaker, and that's why it's so important to put ourselves out there, because we never know in that moment. We may never hear about it, but putting ourselves out there, we create that. We plant those seeds of hope, or there's a spark, and we never know where that spark is going to go. What is going to be set ablaze from that moment, because we put ourselves out there to share, hey, I've been through this, and here's how I got through it. And if I can save you the time and energy so that you don't have to suffer the way I suffered, or however long I suffered, if I can save you on that, or can you just come alive? Instead of the, oh, another day, another dollar, I'm hitting the snooze. It's like, no, it's like, turn off the alarm, let's get running. What's happening? What are we doing today? You know, I'm so inspired by Bill. I'm like 80 years old. He was blessed with 50 plus years of marriage, and he is out there, you know, it doesn't stop here. It's never too late. You're never too old. And, you know, if you've got today, if you're waking up and you've got a pulse, do something with it. And I just love that so much.
Let me keep going here, Lee, because I don't want to lose the energy that you're putting into the room, and I want to connect some dots as we go too. And Bernie mentioned in his challenges, right? He mentioned the fact that, you know, he's academically trained. This is something that I see. We get so focused on the presentation of our message that we lose ourself in that process, and we can't be the way, I don't know if Bernie, I think you said extemporaneous or what, get more relaxed about it. So Bernie, what do you think about what you just heard from Lee and so on? Bernie, you're for some reason muted. I don't think it's you. Just let me do this. I'm going to mute you and then unmute you and ask to unmute and see what happens. Sometimes. No, sorry. Hey, did I hear you? No. Okay. Bernie, if you could maybe refresh and come back, that might, just to make sure. Anybody else? Sorry, I picked the one person that was having a challenge here. So, and he didn't even know it. So go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I very much identify with what you had to say there. And from my perspective, it starts with you of knowing who you are, what your strengths are, what your experience has been, what your passions are, what type of personality you have, and the fact that you are indeed unique and that you have something to offer to the world that nobody else does. And you start with that, and when you as you study that and you realize who you are and what you have to offer, that starts telling you, from my perspective, what your purpose is, why you're here. And that's the message that you want to get out is for everybody is you're unique. You need to really understand who you are. And then based on that, that will tell you then, especially your passions, what is that you really enjoy doing? And then how can I use my strengths, my experience, and my personality style to put that message out there of this is what you need to do in order to really enjoy life yourself.
Yeah.
And for me, it just gets better and better.
So when you get to be 80 years old, your record is broken and you keep playing the same tune, right, Bill? No, I'm just teasing. I'm messing with you because that was your introduction. So you just gave it again. I'm sorry. No, you don't need to respond because I want to come back to Bernie now. I want to have Bernie.
Go ahead.
Bernie, are you there? No, your lips are still moving.
I can't hear you. Oh,
I'm so sad because I know Bernie. I can tell by his body language. He's got some. So
well, I'd love to make a suggestion in Bernie's direction.
Okay.
When I joined, I did Toastmasters International for 2 years, and one of the things that Toastmasters does is impromptu speaking, which is that extemporaneous speaking. I can say that word. I can get those syllables out there. And I was 4 months into my membership, and I decided to just play and enter the contest. And one of the contests was a prepared speaking. The other one was the impromptu table topics is what they call it. And there's no preparation for it. It's you get mic'd up. They get you in front of the audience. They give you the prompt. You have exactly 2 minutes and off you go. And 4 months in, didn't know what I was getting myself into. And they give me the prompt. I go at it. I take first place. That was the first step. And then I advanced several times, and I stopped short just of the national level. And I thought, well, not too bad for a rookie here in Toastmasters International. And that was a lot of fun. And improv classes, if you are looking for a fun venture to play, take an improv class. Maybe it's a series of 6 classes, because it gets your brain to warm up and just open up to, we're going to go for anything goes. And that fear that a lot of people deal with public speaking is because it's stepping into the unknown, right? It's stepping outside of that comfort zone. It's like, but what could happen? I could make a fool of myself, or I could totally fumble, or I might even fall on stage. And ultimately, we're going to live through the exercise, right? And I understand the academic background and scripting out every word. I haven't done that for years. I only did that back in my college days. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I did something scripted and I tried to memorize it, I sounded like a robot. And I built my own self-confidence so that I could lean into myself and just play with anything. And that's what real improv is just going with the flow and creating that yes and scenario, right? And I loved when Ricky shared, like, you know what? Somebody wants me to get anxious. Why? What is that going to solve? How is that going to help me in a situation? Just rolling with it. And I learned this from my favorite Uncle Joe, who just said, if things don't go your way, adventure. And it's like, yes. And I'm like, I love how my life is a continuous adventure. And it's like, oh, wait, here we go this way. All right, let's go play and see what happens. So when it comes to extemporaneous speaking, first of all, we got to really shake it out of our heads. Shake it out of our head that I have to be perfect. I have to show up as highly intelligent. I have this academic background. Well, this is what I need to bring out to the world. Says who? Says who? No, what the world wants is Bernie. Who is Bernie? How does he show up authentically? What lights him up? What gets him going? What types of jokes does he enjoy, if he likes jokes at all? Is it a dad joke, or is it something that we're going to take people on a journey, and all of a sudden there's the pivot, and that's where the laughter comes through, whatever it happens to be. And what are your favorite subjects to speak about? And if there's, maybe this is something you can do in a future mastermind. It's like, all right, somebody give Bernie a word. Maybe it's a one word or it's a prompt. All right, Bernie, we're giving you 2 minutes, go. Zero preparation, right? And he's just got to think on his feet. And when you get into a mode of doing that again and again, you got to trust your gut, right? Because especially if you came from academia, there's a lot of stuff in your head that you know. And if you've lived every day, well, there's a lot of things that you've lived. So again, there's stories there, there's actual facts, or you know what? Play like Robbie D, and you just make stuff up.
Now, let me
Yeah.
preface that.
And we got the
I
hallucinator
don't just
again.
make
so-
stuff up. I have a good background. When you have so much experience, you really are able to talk on a lot of different subjects, and you can expand on that subject. And that idea you just put out, and Dave, give us a word. I think that would be an amazing exercise for one of our groups. Give us a word, because we all like to talk. And if you have enough experience, you can talk on almost anything. My biggest problem is keeping everything organized.
Yes.
And you're amazing because you just have everything so compartmentalized that you're able to access the information. And that's an accomplishment, and that's something I am trying to learn, to be more organized.
Thank you. Thank you. And truthfully, where that comes from is, what is my intention? I am so focused on my intention. I don't know what questions are going to be asked of me, and I don't know. It's like, and what fits great for this audience here might be the same thing that fits great for another audience. And so I continuously think about, where do I listen? I've got to tune in and listen, and where can I bring the value for this audience? Because it's not about me. Like I said, I have never wanted to be the center of attention, but I believe I'm so passionate about my mission. It's like, we each have something to take out into the world to create that impact. And we don't impact just our audiences. We impact the relationships that they have. It's such a ripple effect. And I care so much about that. So how can I help you along with that? And while I'm thinking about listening, I want to touch on David on that for a moment. My daughter, she is so incredible, and she's one of those super fast processors too. And my husband as well. I think we've got a lot of it in our family. And I'm at the above average. And I noticed this growing up with my brothers, that, I'm pretty smart. I pick up things pretty quickly. Okay, that's pretty cool. My first brother, I noticed he was a lot slower. He was going to get to the same answer. He just needed a little more time to get there. And then my baby brother, boom, it seemed instantaneous. He was thinking so fast. I'm like, man, things seem to just come so naturally to him. Why don't I have that? Well, we each have a way of going through it. And no matter how we process, we have our strengths and we have our struggles. And we want to acknowledge and live the most out of our strengths. When we have a fast processing brain, what I like to suggest is breath work, where we can tap into our parasympathetic nervous system and move away from the amygdala. And it's the amygdala part of our brain that hits that fright or flight or freeze part. And this is where things are just moving so fast. So it's part of that nervous system, David. And it's not that you can't get through a sentence. It's like your brain's like, but the comfort zone, and then we got to do this. We got to react to that. And so when we can do breath work and tap into the parasympathetic system, then we center ourselves and ground ourselves. Think about our intention again for the audience. And then it's in that moment where we are able to slow down, and even where we can use a pause to let the audience catch up and let ourselves catch up with ourselves for a moment. And then when we have those, like I suggested with Bernie, with like, hey, throw him a word and see if he can use that in a few sentences or speak about it for 60 seconds. And what do we get from that? Same thing with listening. Can I listen with full intention for the next 5 minutes and not say a thing and allow my brain just to absorb and process? I'm just observing, and that's it. And in that practicing of listening, then we give ourselves that rhythm of slowing down. And again, what's my intention? And am I fulfilling that intention? So I hope that's helpful.
It's very helpful, and actually, I can translate this into a very sexist view of the world. Because I have 4 of the 5 kids. I have 4 daughters, and you've read the book probably or understand. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and I had to learn early on that my job, when it came to having an interaction with the women in my life in particular, that I needed to just listen and not have any answers. And that was actually very informed of a lot of the things that I do in life today, because I was the fixer. I always wanted to be the dad that had the answers. I didn't want my girls to cry. I didn't want them to be upset. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I know what to do. And they didn't want to hear any of that. They just wanted to know that I was present and listening to what they were saying and being empathetic or affirming, to use your candy method, to say, yeah, but you're great. I know what you're saying. It's not like, oh, well, you need to understand that guy because, here's what he's thinking, and it's not as bad as you think. That is not good. That is not a good response when you're dealing with somebody who's working through stuff on their own. So yeah, you're right. And breathing, by the way, I'm a big believer in being present. That's one of the things.
Right.
I think when we had a little talk yesterday, and I just did it, I said, my brain is in overdrive and my mouth feels like something has to fill it. So I fill it with affectation. I fill it with stuff that doesn't need to be there, instead of just breathing and letting my everything catch up. So brilliant. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. And I know time is moving along. Are we having fun?
Yeah.
Because if we're not having fun, it's not worth doing, right? I also want to make sure that I touch on the other big challenge speakers have. Where do I speak? How do I find these opportunities?
Right.
And I want to say that the speaking opportunities is like trouble. If you go looking for it, you're going to find it.
Yeah.
So the opportunities are there. 2 big resources I'd like to share with you. The first one, David, if you want to type it into the chat, it's speakersplayhouse.com. So speakers plural, playhouse.com all together. This is a networking community ran by 2 amazing ladies, Kimberly Crow and Jenny Trask. And they meet every Thursday, 10:30 to noon Pacific. And this is I will tell you, it's a fire hose, high energy time together where those event planners who have stages and they're looking for speakers, they announce what they have. And then Jenny and Kimberly go through their membership. There's different levels. Thursday is free. Getting started, you can be a free member as long as you want to. There's benefits if you do pay into the other different tiers of the membership. So they go through that, and then the second part is speakers looking for stages. And so we say our name. So the event planners or those who have stages, they say their name, they say what their stage is, what kind of speaker are they looking for, and then the audience that they start. Then as a speaker, we get to come on and say, here's my name, this is my talk title, this is my target audience. And then all of your details get dropped into the chat And of course, we save the chat because everything is flipping so fast. And then you can save the chat and you can always follow up where you want to go. So there's podcast opportunities, summits, virtual events, in-person opportunities, and they're all over. And so we have about 75 people. When we get over 100 people, there's a special offer Jenny and Kimberly always make, and it's like, oh, what's going to happen now? The first time, you might be really overwhelmed. I say, don't judge the first time. Come back another time because it's such a frenzy. It's like, whew, when that 90 minutes is done, especially if you are an introvert, I can only imagine you just completely deflate. But it's so worth it. So if you are looking for speaking opportunities, that's my #1 place to go.
And what did you say their names were? The two women?
Jenny Trask and
Kimberly Crow.
Kimberly. I know Jenny, for those of you who've been around for a bit, Jenny has been, has led one of our, back when we were doing on Friday. And so you can find her on our channel or whatever. Jenny has been a speaker, but she was also in the travel business, and she does curated travel. She's also been a guest on my Warrior versus Zombie podcast, so you can learn a little bit about Jenny. I don't know Kimberly, but Kimberly's kind of the nuts and bolts as I perceive it. That group gets together virtually on Zoom on Thursdays, correct?
Yeah, Thursdays, 10:30 to noon Pacific time.
Yeah, so that's 12:30 to 2 our time. So yeah, in fact, Jenny was on my podcast, and I was at that time was doing it on Thursdays at 11. She's actually in Houston, last I checked.
Yes.
And she said, "Oh, well, I'm getting ready to go to Speaker's Playhouse. Why don't you come?" And so I went there. That was my first experience, and everything Lee says is true. It's very high energy, very fast moving, seems like a good group of people, and I can only stand so much of it. So an hour and a half may be a little much, and I'm an extrovert. So, but my problem isn't the same as some people have. By the way, 80% of people are introverts, and that doesn't mean you don't get on the stage. That just means that you have to muster some energy to get on the stage, whereas my energy comes when people show up. So that's a little bit different. But anyway, so go ahead, keep going, Lee. That's great.
Yes, and then if you have an account on Facebook, there is a group called Need a Guest. It is led by Angel Tussey, who is also a member of Speakers Playhouse. And she is a PR specialist. She used to have a radio broadcast show, and now she helps so many of us who want to get our names out in the media and using press releases and, again, getting on podcasts. So in the Need a Guest Facebook group, there are podcasters looking for guests. And so you can title your post, Be a Guest or Need a Guest. And if you want to be a guest, you can say, this is what I have to offer for your podcast, for your audience. And I forget how large the community is. Another fantastic way to look, especially if you want to be a podcast guest. And if you have a podcast yourself, I have my UpCycle Your Life weekly video podcast show. And yes, David, it's for women by women. And even though in my own coaching, I work with both men and women, I'm like, there are so brilliant men out there who can bring so much value to this female-centered community. But part of our protocol right now is like, I can only bring on women guest speakers at this point in time.
Yeah,
so,
I understand the sexism that goes on in the women's world. So
right.
Women can be sexist, men can't. I get it.
Right.
That's just the way it works.
Here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there's a local organization. It's also online called Speaker Co-op.
Well, Lee is part of Speaker Co-op, or Lee knows. Lee knows Jeff. That's how we got Lee today, by the way.
Yeah. And he actually, once you get signed up with Speaker Co-op, he actually looks for opportunities for you and will recommend you places. So.
Right.
Matter of fact, that's how I got to RPN was through Jeff. I was doing that. He said,
How do you access, Bill, the Speakers Co-op? Are they on Facebook?
I'll give you a link,
Okay.
Casey. I'm a member of Speakers Co-op, so
yeah,
predominantly to give speakers stage for both my podcast, which, by the way, if anything she said gave you some kind of, hey, I need to do that, the first step you ought to go is be on Warrior versus Zombie, because if you've ever had a one-to-one with me, then you can be a podcast guest. Because I told this yesterday on another group that was a little less formal with people that didn't understand speaking, talking about speaking. But basically, it's simply telling your story and telling why you're doing what you're doing, the value you provide, and what kind of impact you want to have. It's the same thing Lee just walked through, and everybody should know that. It's kind of like if you want to do a 10-minute spotlight in our networking group, and I say at the last minute, can you speak, do your spotlight, because we don't have somebody. Everybody should be able to do that. Everybody should be able to. We all have a story, and we shouldn't be afraid to share it. And we shouldn't die with our story in us, just like Casey was saying about her dad, right? It's, there's so much you have to offer. And yes, I know you're comfortable doing what you're doing, and I know you enjoy what you're doing. But wouldn't it be great to get to the end of the road and more than just yourself and God know what it is that you had to offer? Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Okay, sorry, Lee, go back to you.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. And then looking at your local opportunities, is there are there Rotary chapters?
Mm-hmm.
Are Seroptimists? There are different opportunities, and networking, looking through meetup.com and seeing what local meetings are happening, and then networking yourself and then just making the ask, hey, how do guest speakers get to be guest speakers in your community? I got to know a little bit of your people here, and I believe I have something of value. How can I make that contribution? And knowing that 99.9% of the time, you're not allowed to make a call to action or an offer. You're not selling anything. But if it's a way for you to practice your speaking, it's like, okay, let me practice it on this stage, and you're delivering true value to that audience. That's another way to go for it. I know typically with Rotary, you've got to get to know the people, and then somebody invites you to be a speaker. Or there are times you can say, well, who is the managing director, or who is the lead president, or whatever that title is? How do I connect with that person, having that conversation, and make it about building that relationship first, so they get to know you as a genuine being. And then you can make that ask of, hey, I have something of value here. Or I noticed a lot of people that I spoke with while I was networking that they were talking about this challenge, and I think I have an idea that would help them with that. Can I share that with the group at some point? And then moving in that direction. So there, like I said, the opportunities is like trouble. If you go looking for it, you're going to find it. So I hope those little bits are helpful for everybody.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
To piggyback on the idea that everybody has a story to tell, speaking is definitely one way to do it. If you want your story to outlast you, then what you need to do is write a book.
Definitely.
And then that book will be there for, theoretically for eternity, but it will outlast you. So my wife and I finally did that, and that's something that it will continue. She's gone now. I will be someday, hopefully not too soon, but the book will still be there. So that's something to think about. And you really do have to get out of your comfort zone to do that. And whether anybody's going to read it or not is not the problem, not the issue. It's target it to who you think would benefit from it, and then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you try it. So, right.
Go ahead, Casey.
I have a real quick. A couple of years ago, I read this, and it tickled me so bad, or so much rather, that I did it. I did it too. It's to write your own obituary.
Yeah.
When I first heard that, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's terrible, or macabre or something. And then I thought, wait a minute, my family, my friends have no clue all the things that I did. So I started going through my calendars, and I'm writing down and go, dang, that I've had a very interesting background.
I love it. I love it. And I will say, full transparency on my part, I am not a writer. The writing part of my brain and the speaking part of my brain, two entirely different parts. And with the writing part, I struggle. But I can do that extemporaneous speaking. You can throw me on a stage. Okay, Lee, you got 20 minutes. Here is who was in your audience. This is the message you're going to deliver, and go. And I have that's part of my gift. I'm like, okay, I just follow it. And really for me, what speaking comes down to for me, and this is why I believe this works, is I'm just a vessel. I'm like, all right, universe, you know what this audience needs to hear. So I'm just trusting you to pour through me and let my mouth go and go with that. But writing is definitely a challenge. I will say, if it's okay to share, David, that I do have a book being launched this Saturday, May 13th. It's an anthology. So I'm writing along with 19 other authors. The book is called Relentless. And we, from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time, that's when we are focusing on our launch in Amazon. And so I'm really excited because the story you heard today, I do put that in written form and with some more details, of course. And I talk about the candy method in there and my reactor creator mission. With that, again, with the intent to, if anybody does read it, that it will make an impact in some form or fashion. So, yeah.
Good go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Lee, as far as the Relentless book launch, is there a link on Amazon or something like that?
I don't have that yet, but since I have your contact, David, as soon as I have it, if it's okay with you, I'll pass it along to you. If you want to pass it along to your community,
I will do that. Actually, before, maybe if you can get it to me before the recording goes up, I can add that link in the show notes. Yes. One of the things you may have noticed on this platform, it's kind of a convergence of Zoom, the ability to brand your own self, and StreamYard and other things. So there's a lot of capabilities here. And so I've been sharing things, and I just I shared the upcoming meetings, but it's called Relentless, and there's a book launch on Saturday, and we'll have the link for that in the show notes. So that will be awesome.
Let's give your contact information, Lee. Did you put that in the chat?
I did not put that in the chat. The best way to, let's see, can I type in there? I guess I can, huh?
Yeah, you can put in there. I've been posting, but yeah, anybody can put in the chat. And Casey, don't complain. So, the chat, I will take that content and put it in the show notes as well. So if you can't read it, I'll feature that right now. So click on that link.
See it.
Well,
Bernie, is your microphone working?
Look at the screen, click on that link, and it should take you to Speaking Confidently with Lee.
Yes.
So that's where that link goes.
Yes, that's my free Facebook group. And every Tuesday, today being Tuesday, so this will happen today, I have a little video series. I call it Talk Tuesday with Lee. And I gather challenges from people that come into contact with the world. What's your biggest challenge? And I take notes on all that. I do my research, or I take it from my own experience, and I'll touch on that challenge or problem. Like, how do I remove verbal fillers or minimize them? How do I speak extemporaneously? Maybe that'll be my topic today, Bernie. So thank you for inspiring that. And how do I tell my story without losing track of where I'm going so that I stay connected with the others? All of these different things I try to touch on and do it in a 3 to 5 minute fashion, because I know our attention spans are very minimal, but that way it's helpful. And so this is a free Facebook group. There are 3 questions there. Feel free to answer which ones are most comfortable for you. The first one is simply, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to speaking? Again, it helps me to serve. And the second is, would you like my free resource on speaking resources? And then the last one is, would it be valuable to you if I shared with you, how I can work with you 5 days for free? So just giving that there. And then the second link I put in is just my straight up Facebook page if you want to follow my news feed and my journey. So that's great. And I'd love to stay connected because each and every one of you is amazing. Thank you for your participation.
Well, we had fun. And again, thank you again for sharing with us, Lee. We're